Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the ADHD Wise Squirrels podcast and sort of what makes it tick from a sponsor's perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, think about it like this. You see a little squirrel bearing an acorn and you think, oh, that's cute. But that little acorn has the potential to grow into a giant oak tree. So today, we're going to unearth why the ADHD Wise Squirrels podcast is like that acorn and why it presents such a great opportunity for brands.
Okay, I like that analogy. So you're saying there's more to this podcast than meets the eye.
Exactly. And the numbers back it up. Over 55,000 listens in 2024 alone. That's a massive 769% increase from last year.
Wow, 769%. That's incredible growth.
It really is. And it's not just about reaching a large audience, it's about reaching the right audience. So who exactly is tuning in to ADHD Wise Squirrels?
Well, they've got over 5,000 monthly listeners, which is impressive in itself. But what's even more telling is that the average episode consumption is 63%. That means people aren't just starting the episode and then tuning out, they're really sticking with it.
So it's not just passive listening, it's active engagement.
Exactly. And the core demographic is really interesting from a sponsor's perspective. We're talking mid to late career women and men, primarily in that 35 to 59 age range.
That makes sense given the topic.
Yeah.
But why is this particular demographic so valuable to sponsors? What makes them stand out?
Well, think about it. This is a group that's generally motivated and resourceful. They're established in their careers. They're looking for solutions to the challenges they're facing in their lives.
So they're not just listening for entertainment. They're actively seeking information resources.
Right. And they're more likely to have the disposable income to invest in products or services that align with their needs and interests.
That's a key point. It's not just about reaching an audience. It's about reaching an audience that's ready and willing to act.
Absolutely. And geographically speaking, where are these listeners located?
Well, a large majority are based in the U.S., about 71%. But the podcast also has strong followings in Canada, the UK, and Australia.
Wow. So it's got a global reach.
It does, which is pretty impressive for an independently produced podcast.
It really is. You know, that independent status actually works in their favor. It adds to the authenticity of the show and builds trust with the listeners.
So you're saying that because it's not backed by a big corporation or network, it feels more genuine and relatable.
Exactly. And that's a huge asset for potential sponsors because aligning with a trusted source like that can really boost their credibility.
It's like a seal of approval from a friend rather than a faceless corporation.
Exactly. Now, speaking of the people behind the podcast, we can't forget about Dave Delaney, the host himself.
What makes Dave such an asset to the show?
Well, he's been podcasting for over 20 years, so he knows what he's doing. But what really sets him apart is that he's a late diagnosed adult with ADHD.
So he brings firsthand experience to the topic, which must resonate deeply with his listeners.
Absolutely. It means he understands their struggles and their triumphs. He gets it.
And what does that mean for potential sponsors?
It means their message is being delivered by someone who genuinely connects with the audience, someone who's not just reading a script, but speaking from the heart.
So it's about authenticity and empathy, two qualities that are incredibly valuable in today's marketing landscape.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the nitty-gritty of sponsorship. What kinds of packages does ADHD Wise Squirrels offer?
Well, they've actually got a pretty diverse range of options to cater to different needs and budgets, from basic mentions and show notes to full-fledged pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ads within the episodes.
So there's something for everyone.
Exactly. And one thing that really caught my eye is their emphasis on what they call evergreen content.
Ooh, tell me more about that. What does that involve?
Well, it basically means that the sponsor's message doesn't just disappear after the initial episode airs. It continues to promote them long after.
So it's like an extended shelf life for their message.
Exactly.
Right.
Think of things like episode descriptions, website banners, social media promotions. The sponsor's presence becomes woven into the fabric of the podcast's online presence.
That's a really smart strategy. It's not just a one-time shout-out. It's a more holistic approach to brand visibility.
Right. And speaking of smart strategies, they're also offering some pretty enticing discounts for sponsors who sign up in December.
Discounts. Now you've got my attention.
Yeah. For example, a 9-month package comes with a $1,458 discount. Shorter durations have smaller but still significant savings.
Wow, so they're really making it attractive for brands to jump on board.
Exactly. They understand the value they offer, and they're making it easy for sponsors to get involved.
I'm impressed.
Me too.
Yeah.
And you know what else is impressive? That 63% average consumption rate we talked about earlier. What do you think contributes to that level of engagement?
I think it's a testament to the quality of the content and Dave's ability to connect with his audience on a personal level.
He's not just sharing information. He's sharing his own experiences and insights.
Exactly, and he's doing it in a way that's relatable and engaging. He's not afraid to be vulnerable, and that really resonates with listeners.
It's like he's saying, hey, I've been there, I get it, and I'm here to help.
Right. And the fact that he's been podcasting for so long means he's really honed his craft. He knows how to tell a story, how to keep people listening.
And it's not just entertainment. It's valuable information that people can actually use in their lives.
Absolutely. He's providing practical tips, strategies, insights, all based on his own experience and research.
So it's a perfect blend of personal storytelling and actionable advice.
And that's a winning formula for sponsors, too, because when listeners trust the source, they're more likely to be receptive to the messages coming from that source.
It's all about that halo effect. The credibility of the host rubs off on the brands he associates with.
Exactly. Now, you mentioned earlier that ADHD Wise Squirrels has a variety of sponsorship package options. Can we dig into those a little bit more?
Sure thing. So in addition to the traditional pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ad placements, they also offer website banner ads, promotional pop-ups, even sponsorship of Dave's keynote presentations and special events.
Wow, that's quite a diverse range of options.
It is. They've really thought outside the box to create a comprehensive sponsorship program.
And it sounds like they're catering to a variety of budgets and goals.
Exactly. So whether you're a small business or a large corporation, there's a sponsorship option that can work for you.
Now, can you give me a little more detail on those traditional ad placements?
Sure. So pre-roll ads, as the name suggests, play at the very beginning of an episode.
So they're the first thing listeners hear.
Right. Mid-roll ads are strategically placed somewhere in the middle of the episode, providing a natural break in the content.
And post-roll ads play at the very end after the main content has wrapped up.
Each format has its own advantages and disadvantages.
Right. Pre-roll ads are great for grabbing attention, but they can also be skipped by listeners who are eager to get to the content.
Mid-roll ads are less likely to be skipped, but they might not have the same impact as a pre-roll ad.
And post-roll ads are great for reaching listeners who are highly engaged, but they might not be as effective for driving immediate action.
So it really depends on the sponsor's goals and the message they're trying to convey.
Now, you also mentioned website promotional pop-ups and banner ads. Can you tell me more about those?
Sure. So these are visual ads that appear on the ADHD Wise Squirrels website.
So they're a way to reach listeners who are actively browsing the site.
Exactly. And they can be targeted to specific pages or sections of the site.
So, for example, a sponsor could have their ad appear on a page about time management or productivity.
Right. And then there's the opportunity to sponsor Dave's keynote presentations and special events.
And that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, Dave is a sought-after speaker on the topic of ADHD.
Makes sense. He's a recognized expert in the field.
And he speaks at conferences, workshops, and other events all over the country.
So sponsoring one of his presentations is a way to reach a live audience of people who are interested in ADHD.
Exactly. And it's also a way to align your brand with Dave's expertise and credibility.
It's like an endorsement from a trusted source.
Right. And let's not forget about those December discounts we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, those are significant savings.
They are. A 9-month package comes with a $1,458 discount, for example.
Wow, that's a great deal.
It is. And it's a smart move on the podcast part because it incentivizes sponsors to commit to a longer-term partnership.
It's a win-win situation. The sponsor gets a great value, and the podcast gets the financial support it needs to keep growing.
Now let's shift gears for a moment and talk about Dave's role as the host. We've touched on his experience and his personal connection to the topic, but I'm curious to delve a bit deeper into his style and approach. What makes him such an effective communicator?
Well, for one thing, he's a natural storyteller. He knows how to weave together personal anecdotes, scientific research, and practical advice in a way that's both informative and engaging.
So it's not just a dry lecture, it's a conversation.
Exactly. And he's got a great sense of humor. He knows how to inject levity into serious topics without making light of them.
So he's relatable. He's
Yeah.
approachable.
Exactly. And that's really important when you're dealing with a topic like ADHD, which can be very sensitive and personal.
He creates a safe space for listeners to feel heard and understood.
Right. And he does it all with a genuine sense of empathy and compassion.
He's not just talking at his audience, he's talking with them.
And that's a rare quality. It's what makes him such a compelling host and such a valuable asset to sponsors.
Because when listeners trust the host, they're more likely to trust the brands he endorses.
Absolutely. It's all about that halo effect again.
Now let's circle back to the evergreen content opportunities we discussed earlier. Can you give us some concrete examples of what that might look like for a sponsor?
Sure. Imagine a sponsor whose product is a time management app specifically designed for individuals with ADHD.
Okay, I'm following. How would evergreen content come into play?
Well, their brand logo could be prominently displayed on the ADHD Wise Squirrels website.
Okay, that makes sense.
Their app could be featured in a dedicated blog post on the site with a link to download it.
So it's not just a one-time mention. It's an ongoing presence.
Exactly. And Dave could even create a social media post highlighting the app and how it can help listeners manage their time more effectively.
So the sponsor's message is integrated into the fabric of the podcast's online presence.
Right. And it continues to work for them long after the initial episode airs.
It's a smart strategy that really maximizes the value of the sponsorship.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the target audience for a moment. We've mentioned that it's primarily mid to late career individuals, but can we dive a bit deeper into their motivations and aspirations? What are they looking for, and how can sponsors tap into those needs?
That's a great question. This demographic is at a stage in their lives where they're often juggling multiple responsibilities, demanding careers, family obligations, and the ever-present desire for personal growth.
It's a lot to handle.
It is. And for many, ADHD adds another layer of complexity.
They're seeking ways to improve their focus organization time management skills.
They want to be more productive, more efficient, more successful.
Exactly. And they're looking for solutions that can help them achieve those goals.
So sponsors who can offer products or services that address those needs are more likely to resonate with this audience.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the challenges they face and offering solutions that genuinely make a difference.
It's not just about selling a product, it's about becoming a trusted resource and partner in their journey.
Exactly. And that's where the power of a podcast like ADHD Wise Squirrels really shines. It's a platform that's already built that trust and credibility within the community.
So sponsors who align with that mission are more likely to succeed.
Absolutely. It's all about that synergy between the sponsor's message and the podcast's values.
And let's not forget the power of Dave's personal endorsement.
Right. He's not just a host. He's a trusted guide who genuinely believes in the products and services he recommends.
And that authenticity resonates with listeners. It's not just a sales pitch, it's a genuine recommendation from someone they respect.
It's like getting a tip from a friend who knows you well.
You're more likely to pay attention and take action.
Exactly. And that's the kind of impact the sponsors are looking for. They want their message to be heard, but they also want it to be believed and acted upon.
And that's precisely what a podcast like ADHD Wise Squirrels can deliver.
Absolutely. So for any brands out there considering a podcast sponsorship, I highly recommend taking a closer look at ADHD Wise Squirrels. It's a unique opportunity to connect with a highly engaged, motivated, and receptive audience.
And with those December discounts, now is the perfect time to explore the possibilities. But before we wrap up our deep dive, I want to touch on one more important aspect of podcast sponsorship. We've talked a lot about the benefits for sponsors, but what about the benefits for the podcast itself? How does sponsor support contribute to the overall success of ADHD Wise Squirrels?
Well, it's essential, really. I mean, sponsor support is the lifeblood of any podcast, especially one that's independently produced like ADHD Wise Squirrels.
So it's what allows Dave to keep creating the content, to keep the lights on, so to speak.
Exactly. It helps cover the costs of things like hosting, editing, equipment, marketing, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that goes into producing a high-quality show.
So it's not just about Dave benefiting personally. It's about ensuring the podcast can continue to thrive and reach as many people as possible.
Right. It's about sustainability, and it's also about growth. Sponsor support can help Dave invest in things that will make the show even better, like hiring a producer to help with the workload or upgrading his equipment for better sound quality.
And that ultimately benefits the listeners, too, because they get a more polished and professional listening experience.
Exactly. It's a win-win-win situation. The sponsors get their message in front of a targeted audience, Dave gets the support he needs to create great content, and the listeners get a valuable resource that they can rely on.
So it's a reminder that even small actions, like choosing to support a sponsor, can have a ripple effect and contribute to something much bigger.
I love that. It's about being part of a community and recognizing that we all have a role to play in supporting the things that matter to us.
Well said. Now let's take a closer look at those different sponsorship packages and break down exactly what each one entails.
Okay, so starting with the basics, we have the website footer sponsorship. This is a great option for brands who want to show their support for the podcast without breaking the bank.
So it's like a subtle nod to the audience saying, hey, we believe in what this podcast is doing.
Right. And then we have the show notes sponsorship, which is a step up from the footer sponsorship.
So what does that one involve?
Well, with this package, sponsors get to include a brief message about their brand and a link to their website in the show notes for each episode.
That's a great way to provide a little bit more context about your brand and give listeners a direct way to connect with you.
Exactly. And then we have the episode description sponsorship, which is similar to the show notes sponsorship, but the message appears in the actual episode description on podcast platforms.
So it's even more visible to potential listeners.
Right, because that's the information people see when they're browsing for podcasts to listen to.
So it's a great way to catch their eye and pique their interest.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have the more traditional ad placements, the pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ads.
These are the audio ads that play within the episodes themselves.
Right. And as we discussed earlier, each format has its own unique advantages and disadvantages.
So sponsors can choose the format that best aligns with their goals and budget.
Exactly. And then for sponsors who are looking for something beyond audio, there's the option to do website banner ads, promotional pop-ups, or even sponsor Dave's keynote presentations and special events.
Now that's what I call thinking outside the box.
It is. It's about getting creative and finding ways to connect with the audience in a more meaningful way.
So as you can see, there's a whole spectrum of sponsorship options available with ADHD Wise Squirrels. Something for every budget and every goal.
And they've done a fantastic job of outlining everything in their sponsorship package document. It's very clear and easy to understand.
That's great to hear. Transparency is so important when it comes to these kinds of partnerships.
Absolutely. It builds trust and helps sponsors make informed decisions.
So if you're a brand that's looking to connect with a highly engaged and motivated audience, I highly recommend checking out ADHD Wise Squirrels.
They've got a lot to offer, and with those December discounts, now's the perfect time to get involved.
I completely agree. So to wrap things up today, we've explored the incredible growth of the ADHD Wise Squirrels podcast. We've delved into the demographics of their dedicated listener base, and we've unpacked the wide array of sponsorship opportunities available.
We've also talked about the power of authentic connection, the importance of evergreen content, and the win-win-win nature of sponsoring a podcast like this.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine partnering with a podcast that not only aligns with your brand values, but also allows you to make a real difference in the lives of thousands of people.
Imagine your message reaching people who are actively seeking solutions to the challenges they're facing.
Imagine being part of a community that's dedicated to empowering individuals with ADHD to thrive.
That's a powerful vision.
It is. And it's one that's within reach for any brand that chooses to partner with ADHD Wise Squirrels.
So if you're looking for a sponsorship opportunity that's both impactful and effective, I urge you to take a closer look at this podcast.
We think you'll be impressed by what you discover.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.